So this morning we do have a guest preacher, but before I introduce her and she comes up, I'm going to go ahead and read the scriptures for you that she'll be preaching from. Your first scripture is from the book of Genesis, chapter 18. I'll be reading verses 1 through 8. In your pew Bibles, it's on page 11. Genesis is the easiest book to find, unless it's Revelation. All right, chapter 18, verses 1 through 8. Listen now for the word of the Lord. Now the Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent in the heat of the day. Now Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. And when he saw them, he hurried from the entrance of his tent to meet them, and he bowed low to the ground. He said, "I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord. If I have, then do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may all wash your feet and rest under this tree. And then let me get you something to eat, so that you can be refreshed, and then go on your way, now that you have come to your servant." "Very well," they answered. "Do as you say." And so Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah. "Quick," he said, "get 3 seahs of the finest flour, and knead it, and bake some bread." And then he ran to the herd and selected a choice tender calf and gave it to his servant, who hurried to prepare it. He then brought some curds and milk and the calf that had been prepared, and he set these before them. And while they ate, he stood near them under a tree. Our second scripture is from the letter to the church in Galatia. I'm going to read chapter 6 and just one verse, verse 2. It's on page 826 in your pew Bible. It'll also be on the overheads in front of you. This is from Galatians chapter 6, verse 2. "Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ." This morning I want to welcome up to the front a friend of mine. She is the person who actually succeeded me in taking over the executive director role at Our Daily Bread, which, as many of you will remember, is the nonprofit where I served for about 5 years before becoming your pastor here at Westchester Presbyterian. And so Georgine Getty is her name, and she has been in the nonprofit community in leadership roles for, well, I'll let her tell her story, 15 approximate years. And in the greater Cincinnati, and therefore has a servant heart and has served a lot of our neighbors and people in our community in need in various roles. And, well, I'll let her tell you a little bit more about what's going on at Our Daily Bread right now. And so I want to welcome up to the front Georgine Getty.
Good morning. As Tyler said, my name is Georgine, and I'm the director of Our Daily Bread Soup Kitchen. I know a lot of you know Our Daily Bread through Tyler, but for those of you who don't, we are Cincinnati's largest soup kitchen, located right across the street from Findlay Market, down and over the Rhine. Excuse me. We serve 300 to 400 nutritious home-cooked meals each day, Monday through Friday. There are many things that make Our Daily Bread unique. One is that 100% of our food is donated, which spares over 200,000 pounds of usable food each year. We have partnerships with local vendors at Findlay Market, Queen City Sausage, JTM, Buskins, Costco, Kroger, and many other companies who provide us with fresh meat, vegetables, pastries, coffee, and, of course, bread. One of my favorite donations is from Edible Arrangements, you know, the bouquets of fruit. We get the part that's left of the pineapple after they stamp the star or the flower out of the middle. And we also get the strawberries that are too ugly to make it into the bouquet. That means that all of our guests get fresh fruit salad every single day. Another thing that makes Our Daily Bread unique is our volunteers. Every day, 25 to 35 volunteers prepare, serve, and clean up after the meals and pick up our food donations. Together with our guests, they are the beating heart of Our Daily Bread, and they show their love in every table they wipe, every spoonful of green beans they dish up, and every smile that they share. Which reminds me of Abraham. Right after Abraham offered hospitality to the three strangers, and they say, "Do as you say," he hurries into the tent to Sarah. He asks her to bake some bread. Then he selects the calf. He has a servant prepare the calf. Somebody pulled together a cheese tray. Somebody drew water, and he brings it back to them. I just want you to take a minute to catch that. It's Abraham who offers the hospitality, but it's Sarah and the rest of the household that make it happen. For those of you who ever have prepared a meal, especially one of that magnitude, you know that it takes work to provide hospitality. But when work is done with others, it becomes light. And when work is done for others, it becomes lighter still. And when you ask any of our volunteers at Our Daily Bread why they do what they do, every last one of them will tell you it's because they receive far more than they give. And then they give these sly little smiles like they're getting away with something. But the biggest thing that makes Our Daily Bread special is our commitment to hospitality. Our founder's name was Cookie Vogelpohl. In the 1980s, Cookie was working downtown, and on her lunch break, she saw a man dig through a garbage can, emerge with a crumpled fast food bag, and eat the remains of a hamburger. Cookie was incredibly upset by this, and she could not stop thinking about this man. The thing about Cookie is that she was from a large, loving family on the west side. Our standing joke is that everyone on the west side of Cincinnati was either related to Cookie or friends with her. So I think what really troubled Cookie, as Tyler said in the children's sermon, was not the man's hunger, which led him to such a degrading act, but his loneliness. Cookie's blessing of friends and family meant that she would never, ever in her life be so alone that she would get hungry enough to have to eat garbage. After the event, Cookie was telling her aunt about how troubled she was by what she'd seen. She kept saying, "Somebody needs to do something." And her aunt quietly said, "Well, you're someone, Cookie." There are times in this world when you can track the exact moment that God touches your heart. This was Cookie's moment. And with that and tons of hard work, Our Daily Bread was born. Today, when visitors first enter our building, they face a mirror, and underneath it are the words, "You are someone," because sometimes we all need that little nudge. The guiding principle Cookie left to us is to be pleasant and present. And in this way, I believe Cookie was also a bit of a prophet. In Genesis 18, upon first meeting the three strangers, Abraham said, "Let a little water be brought and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree, while I bring a morsel of bread that you may refresh yourselves, and after that you may pass on, since you have come to your servant." Imagine this desert. Imagine these men. They were hot, they were dirty, they were tired, they were thirsty, they were hungry. Sure, we know they came straight from God and that this was the beginning of the promise of Isaac, but Abraham didn't know that. He just knew that these were three strangers, in the words of Woody Guthrie, who were doing some hard traveling. Empathy. This is one of the things that makes us truly human. When we are in crisis, traveling to an uncertain future, when we are tired and weak and hungry, that is when we most need the hospitality of others, paid forward in faith. Abraham didn't look for an angle. He just knew what it felt like to be tired and hungry. And so it is that in recognizing the needs of others and in meeting that need, we recognize our own frailty and our own humanity. The night my father died, I have never felt at such a loss. I remember that I couldn't even decide whether I should sit or I should stand. My mother, sister, grandma, and I looked to one another for help, but we are all feeling the same loss, the same uncertainty. Then the doorbell rang. It was Joanne Hovey, a woman from my parents' church. She had a shells and cheese casserole, pineapple, and a coffee cake. I just stared at her. She hugged me and told me to take the food, put it on the table, and bring back her basket. I did as I was told. Eat, she said. Eat with your family. And then she left. Joanne broke the spell. We ate. Then we ate seconds. We were amazed at how hungry we were. We told stories. We planned the funeral. And in this way, life went on. Joanne Hovey took on an almost mythic status in my eyes that evening, though my mother does remind me that there were many, many others who provided food and support in those terrible weeks. As I look back now, I realize that we were just one stop in a number of good deeds that Joanne does every day. Goodness is her habit. Hospitality is her gift. That is why she needed her basket back. I think often of where our guests are coming from when they come to Our Daily Bread for a meal. Sure, some are regulars just looking to play chess with their friends, but many others are new to homelessness. They come to us in their own state of grief and loss, in sickness, in fear. We might not be their Abraham at that moment or their Joanne Hovey, but then again, we might be. It is in the moment of receiving hospitality that we are at our most human. It is in the moment of giving hospitality that we are at our most human. And it is in this connection, human to human, that we are most likely to touch the divine. I don't know much about Scripture, but one of the stories that has stuck with me from Sunday school is the moment where Jesus is struggling under the weight of his cross, and the Romans order Simon of Cyrene to help him carry it. We don't know how Simon felt about this, but we do know his name, and we know that he was there. Through that entire terrible, humiliating, painful, scary scene, there was this one moment of grace, this one moment where Simon threw his shoulder beneath Jesus' burden and helped carry that weight. At this moment, Jesus was also at his most human. God gives us, each and every one, a weight to carry to remind us that we are human. Sometimes that weight is unbearable. This is why God also gives us empathy and the will, the heart, the love to do what we can to help. As Galatians reminds us, carry each other's burden, and in this way you fulfill the law of Christ. And as Bill Withers further reminds us, for it won't be long till I'm going to need somebody to lean on. But in the day-to-day, it's usually not as epic as Simon of Cyrene carrying the cross. In the day-to-day, it's as simple as cutting up a pineapple, whether you're an Our Daily Bread volunteer or Joanne Hovey filling up her basket. And the weird part, the part that makes my volunteers get that sneaky little smile, the secret that's not a secret at all, is that in order to help carry the burden of another, you have to first set your own burden down. And I found that burdens are never quite as heavy as you remember when you pick them back up again. I will end with one final story. When Cookie passed away in December 2016, there was a big fancy church service. St. Joseph's was packed. Everyone wore their fancy clothes and their uncomfortable shoes. The sermon was the sermon, and we went on our way. A few weeks later, we held the real memorial service for Cookie in the dining room of Our Daily Bread, a ground that was just as holy to her as her beloved St. Joe's. As you can imagine, this was a more, as they say, casual affair. Her family and friends were there again, but this time they told funny stories. Like the time Cookie was expecting a donation of friars, as in the chickens, and received instead a group of friars, as in the Franciscans. Towards the end of the event, a quiet man stood up. He said a few years before he had been sleeping on a mat on the floor of the drop-in center, a shelter downtown. Every morning, he struggled to think of a good reason to get up off of that mat. And every morning, he remembered that he would get to see Miss Cookie at Our Daily Bread. This tiny little spark of hope was what got him up each morning, got him into housing, got him back to himself. He ended his brief memory with, I don't need Our Daily Bread anymore, not for food, but I still come here because maybe someone else needs to see my face. You never know. You never do. You never know when you can touch someone's heart. You never know when that one loving word or deed will stick. You never know when or where or how you will be needed or who you will need someday. All we can do is be present to the possibility, speak and act pleasantly, and be grateful for the moments when they come. For in every meal shared with loved ones or with strangers, we can see the promise of God and all of the complicated glory that He baked into each and every human right from the very start. Thank you.